Hi, I'm Christy Sloan, and I'm taking you on some artful adventures over at ChristySloan.com. A lot of my friends are stampers, scrapbookers, card makers, and I'm trying to urge everyone to spread their creative wings and try some new things. We all have a lot of supplies that maybe we're not using, and we've got supplies that we might not even think of using in different ways. So this week, I want to show you some ways to get a watercolor effect with some of the things that you might have on hand. And today we're starting out with our regular dye-based ink pads. So that's what we're up to today. Okay, let's get started. Today we're going to be using the regular dye-based ink, which is water soluble, and that's why we're going to be using that. We're going to use a water brush. I'll tell you more about that in a second. And we're going to use a waterproof black pad. We're going to use StazOn. It works well for a lot of things. Now, the water brush, I just love these. They're real easy to work with. The cap comes off, and you can see the little, water brush up here. I have ink all over my hands just getting ready to even do this. Yes, I'm messy. And so then the top screws off here, and you can put the water right in here. So it's really great to have on hand. You can take it with you, even if you're traveling or something and you want to do a little bit of watercolor. A water brush is really neat for that. So, and then we're going to use watercolor paper. Now the reason that you want to use watercolor paper when you're using a technique like this is because it's just made differently. It's made to, in the end, it will, absorb more water and not just completely ruin a piece of paper. But the thing about it is, it will allow you to move your color around with the water on top of the paper before it starts, penetrating, farther into the layers of the paper. And that's different because once you're trying to move it around on top of the paper, you want to be able to, easily move that. Otherwise, on a regular piece of paper, it soaks in really quickly, and if you're trying to, move it around or change the color a little bit or add a little bit more water to lighten it up, all it does is it begins to kind of destroy the fibers of the paper. They start kind of coming apart and pilling and just makes a real mess. So it's not really a good kind of paper to use for this technique. So what you want to do is you're going to take your stamp pad, and then all you're going to do is you're going to squeeze it together. You're going to kind of pump some ink into the top of the lid. And even though that doesn't look like a lot of ink, there really is, plenty for us to get started with. And we'll do the same thing with this one. Just kind of pump it up a little bit. Flip it out, and there you see, you've got your little bit of ink. So I like to have a little paper towel or something. Depending on what you're doing, you might even have an extra little scrap of paper and clean your brush off on that and be able to use that for something in the end as well. So all you do is take your brush and get a dab of water in there and just kind of, move it around, pick up the color, and just, lay it down on the paper. Obviously, the more water you have, the lighter the color is going to be. So this water brush seems to really be releasing the water rather quickly. I'm going to wipe it off on my paper towel and then just try to pick it up with a little bit less water. But it's a real fine wash of color. So if you really wanted something with a lot of, to cover a lot of space, it's really kind of a neat look to obtain. And then same thing with our pink color. We're just going to put that on there. Now because this is a water-based ink, once it gets wet with water, it's going to kind of reactivate. So you can see as the pink, goes into the blue, it's combining here and giving kind of like a little purple effect, which that's kind of neat. I like that. So, you can just really kind of play around with that. Now, another thing that you can do is just actually touch the ink pad with your water brush. And you're still able to lay down color like that. You're not getting quite as much color. So if you just have little small places, you would be able to use it with that technique. You can also take a re-inker that you have. If you have a re-inker the same color as your ink pad, you can go ahead and just, put some drops of the re-inker in your lid and use it straight like that. So let's give a little try and see how that is. That's probably way more than I needed. That's okay. It'll go right back into the ink pad, so there's nothing to worry about. Now this is going to be a lot darker. So I mean, and I'm going to squeeze a little bit more water in here. But you can see you really get a different look like that. Much darker, because your ink is more concentrated than it was previously. So that's another way that you can use that. Now I'm going to stamp an image and use this watercolor technique. So we're going to use the StazOn. And the StazOn pad, when you get the StazOn pad, it has this little plastic protective thing inside, and this is actually to help it keep from evaporating so quickly, because a solvent-based ink will evaporate more quickly. So don't throw it away like it's packing material. You'll need that. So we're going to really ink this up. Because that paper has a texture to it, I want to really make sure I have enough ink on here to be able to press really hard and get a decent image. Can't really tell. Doesn't really look like it's got a... Okay, let's try that. Let's see how this does. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, now I want to make sure that I've got plenty of my pink ink, so I'm going to just go ahead and press a little bit more into the top. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the center and work my way out, because I want the center to have a little bit more color to it. So I'll have a little bit more control if I start in the center and work out. I'm just going to kind of go in circles as I go out, and then as it gets a little bit lighter and I know I want to add more, I'm just going to pick up a little more color, and I'm going to start in the center again. And then just kind of make larger circles this time, so I can try and work my way out to the edges. And that's not going to be enough, so I'm going to have to do it again. So again, I'm going to start in the center and just kind of work my way out. I tried this before and it just was a mess, so I like it like this. You've got some definition to the center, and it kind of is soft. So if you've got any places you want to kind of soften up a little bit more, or if you want that center to be just a little bit darker, just go ahead and add it in there on top of it. That's a great thing about watercolors. You know, you really can play with it. If you've got watercolor paper, you really can't mess around with it too much if you're using plain paper. Okay, so there we go. There is the flower. And I'm going to cut that out and put it on a little card project. So I'll be back with that. So here's the finished card. I used the Lucky Limeade and just a little strip of decorative paper over on the side. And then I just stamped a greeting on there. And the front is cut a little bit smaller than the back of the card, so that it has a little border around the outer edge of the card. So that's it. And oh, and also I put a little bit of bling right there in the center, one of the little rhinestones in the center, and the flower is attached with pop dots so that it's you know, up a little bit off of the page. So give it a try, and be sure and let us see anything that you try or any of your projects. We love to see them over on the Facebook group at Artful Adventures. So thanks so much for stopping by.